Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for bearing with us. We had a bit of a technical glitch there. We've reset the session. We've moved everyone, all 113 registered attendees, over to this session. Thanks very much for coming over if you have. We're 11 minutes behind when we should be. So let's start again. Richard, good afternoon. For the first time, and maybe for the second time, can you tell us a bit about your background and of course, CV Wallet?
Yeah, of course, Stephen, and thanks for that. I'm basically a recruitment ad tech kind of guy. Been in the industry since the beginning, really, 1995, which is a terrifying amount of time. And obviously seen the industry changed an awful lot in that sort of time. But personally, having moved from recruitment to recruitment advertising, I've had 3 businesses that I've built. Sold the first one, an ad agency, to WPP. The second I sold to a client, and the third one, which I think most people know me from, which is ClickIQ, which was a programmatic advertising platform. Myself and my co-founder Beverly, we sold that to Indeed in 2019, and did a sort of 3 years there, and then we left and have set up CV, or resume here in the US, CV Wallet. And so CV Wallet is basically, it's a talent marketplace. So bringing together job seekers and recruiters. We originally started out as being a pure job seeker app, where job seekers could basically, they could own and control their own sort of career data. They could prove it to employers to build trust. And it kind of really evolved from there, and AI came along partway through when we were building it, and we had to have a rethink or 3 along the way, but here we are.
Just to throw a spanner in the works. And so the history of your background in recruitment, as you say, from the very beginnings of online recruitment, with Harrison Willis and job sites, right in the very early stages, where people were literally writing the rules on, well, this is what we're going to do. And in the early stages, a lot of companies assumed, well, advertising jobs online will just be the same as advertising jobs on newspaper. It'll just be, instead of paper, it'll be a screen, and you'll make your applications, and the process will remain mostly the same. There have been big changes, but for the longest period, maybe in the 2000s, things seemed relatively static, and didn't really move much beyond what those earliest rules were set by the likes of JobSite and Monster and so on. How do you see the evolution of advertising vacancies online?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It really was a shift of magazines putting jobs online. And actually, my first ever job out of university was had a Rolodex, and I was ringing people and flogging recruitment ad space back in the day. But that evolution, as you say, was pretty stable for quite a long time. Then our friends at Indeed came along, and they popularized the whole idea of shifting that business model to performance based, whether that's cost per click or cost per application. And I think we're now at another stage where it's about to evolve again. And I think what's different this time is what is driving it. And I think what is driving it is job seekers, and specifically their adoption of AI tools, and what that then means to advertisers. Because if you start putting the power into the job seekers' hands, and they start using these tools to apply for jobs, then it suddenly becomes very, very easy to apply for a lot of jobs. And when I first started out, you used to have to put so much effort into your application, written applications, long application forms, this kind of stuff. And that's obviously changed. And I think what's made the situation much worse is, employers have a reputation, or recruiters have a reputation for not always responding to applications as they come in, the old ghosting problem. And the problem with that is if you don't respect the application that's come in, then people will stop making the effort within the application. And what they will then do is they'll reach for the tools that make it as easy as possible, and they'll just spray and pray in the hope that they will get the interviews off the back of that. So I think what we're seeing is job seekers will aggressively use these AI tools. They will be applying for jobs en masse. The number of applications that come through the door will go through the roof, and the employers are going to have a problem. And from an advertising point of view, if you're a job board, this is fairly basic economics, supply and demand. If suddenly there's a lot more applications coming in and the price remains the same, then the cost per application drops like a stone. And therefore, I think what we'll see next is the way that the employers will deal with this problem is they'll want to shift away from paying for clicks and applications that are unsuitable and just a waste of money, and they'll shift towards this idea of a cost per qualified applicant or qualified candidate, depending on exactly how the model works.
So if we can backtrack a bit, and I think it's a structural issue in that I and many other people were predicting, say, around 2000, this is what's going to happen. And it's gotten to 2023 before it has started to happen. And the reason it came around to now is not the regular cycle of boom and bust or candidate surpluses or job surpluses in the market, which we always have on a cyclical basis. Those are not strong enough punctuation points to create the shift, because things gradually change over time. There hasn't been any dramatic change. Maybe the most dramatic before the recent 3 years was in 2008, 2009, the financial crisis of then. And the biggest change that came out of that in recruitment was that so many, certainly in the UK, so many UK companies staffed up with TA teams that had largely come from recruitment firms and decided to do things themselves and then take the technology into their own hands. But I think what's put the control in the hands of the candidates now, in the way that I thought was going to happen in 2003, but didn't, is the pandemic and everyone thinking, well, maybe I can take charge of things more, maybe I can assert myself more, maybe I'm not so tightly bound to my employer, and I'm open to looking at things elsewhere. So the behaviour of candidates, I think, has changed. And candidates taking technology into their own hands and say, well, okay, so we can see that there are all the tools that their employers use to identify candidates, to track them down, source them, make connections with them, and encourage them to apply for vacancies. And maybe have other tools on how do we progress people through the organisation and use technology and maybe AI to do that. But putting control into the hands of candidates is, I think, what's the tail wagging the dog to an extent, where recruiters are saying, well, hold on a second, we can't have 200 people applying for a job. That's untenable. The technology is there, of course, but it's just not what they're used to.
And I think, we've lived with this one-sided system all the time, because when we put ourselves into the job seeker shoes, you're in a situation where I need a job. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got kids that I need to put food on the table for. Frankly, I will do whatever it takes to get this job. And the employers have taken, the recruiters have taken advantage of that, frankly. So you pass over your data to who knows whom and what they do with it and all of that kind of stuff. And I think job seekers have just accepted that. But I think over time, you look at the whole kind of, in a broader perspective, the whole Web3 thing, where people start to own the data that they have, and the idea that when you apply for a job, maybe your CV doesn't just end up in some CV database on somewhere that you've got no idea, who then gets sold to you've no idea who, and actually, do you know what, that has a value, and it doesn't seem right that I should have to give that up just because I want to apply for a job, but right now I have no choice. And I think that dynamic is starting to change. One, there's skill shortages and has been for the last few years. But I also think that the tools that we as recruiters are adopting rapidly, which is great, there's this thing that's coming along and people are going, well, hang on, the job seekers are using this as well. What does this mean? And no one seems prepared to deal with that, because, sorry.
No, sorry. So the job market, applications and candidates and recruiters, all of the components to a job being successfully recruited for are predicated on certain expectations of certain fixed numbers. You know, you advertise a job, it reaches so many people when you put it on X job boards or in a newspaper or in a magazine or on your employer website. You expect to have, say, 30 people see that job advert, 20 people apply. Might be more, might be less, but of those, and you can boil down the numbers to a manageable set of people that you can scan their CVs, interview, and offer the job, and be satisfied that you're doing a good job as a recruiter. The most paranoid person in the world is a recruiter thinking, I'm missing out on a better candidate. You know, I need more people. I need to see more people. They often can't deal with just one candidate who's perfect. They need 5 to choose from. But it reminds me of my dad never said anything that was that quotable, but I remember him saying one time, he said, in the future, Stephen, you won't need to go looking for work. Work will come looking for you. You know, and what he meant was, you know, be good at something and people will come looking for you. But technology means that can happen. But what we're talking about here is having technology doing the looking for you, doing the applications for you, and in the case of CV wallets, putting together the best aspects of someone in a better format than a CV, and it's using blockchain. It's all confirmed information.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, we sort of veer away from the whole blockchain thing a little bit these days, because that's just such a small part of it, and then people start thinking crypto, and it's just ridiculous. But you know, we talk about verification and third-party verification. So if you have a qualification, it's all very well you say that you have, or you here's some proof that you have, or you get the person that issued the qualification to verify that you do in fact have it. And as a trusted middle party in that, we can then give that proof to others. I think the big problem that we have with advertising in some ways is that anyone can apply. And because anyone can apply, you end up throwing 95% of the people that do apply in your bin, because they don't match. And if you take automated tools, that matching is going to get even worse. So you end up with a huge amount of people applying for jobs. Now, you know, one of the reasons that we built ClickIQ and, you know, programmatic took off so much was it's about how do you manage and control what responses you're getting to a particular job. But, you know, in this circumstance, it's not going to work, because if suddenly you get huge amounts of applications for every job, then the value of each application is so much lower. So people then spend a lot less money getting those applications, and before you know it, the whole advertising market has collapsed around you. And I think, you know, when we think about where do we see this thing going, you know, we had sort of 3 core tenets that we wanted to achieve. We wanted to rethink the hiring process. We want to make it trusted, fairer, and more efficient. And really, if you want to make it more efficient for a recruiter, what you do is you get rid of the 95% of unsuitables and people who've applied, and you just get straight to the 5% of qualified applicants that can actually do the job. So everything that we have built from our recruiter platform is aimed to deliver just that. So instead of people finding the job finds the people. And actually, you know, the AI proves actually really useful in doing that efficiently because of the sort of matching that you can then use from within the AI. But the problem that I think, again, in traditional advertising is that as people adopt AI, they're going to get a load of applications. They start trying to apply AI as part of that screening process, and before you know it, you're just going to hit a bus of legislation that says actually AI is not, you know, it doesn't really work for us legally to be screening people out for jobs. So, you know, we have to find other methods. And the other problem is, and I've heard some horror stories lately where, you know, you're getting, because a lot of people are using, not everybody, but a significant number of people are using AI to apply for jobs. You get in this generic AI written application. Sure, it's tailored to the job. Sure, it's using the person's CV in the first place. But you're getting all of these applications, and people are looking at them and they're, well, how do I tell them apart? Because pretty much they look the same. And I heard a story the other day, and it's not the first one I've heard, where the recruiter was literally saying, that looks like an AI application, I'm throwing it in the bin. And yeah, I have a problem with that because one, there's a person behind that. And it might be the reason that person's used AI is maybe they're dyslexic and they struggle writing application forms. So they've used an AI.
Yeah.
So actually you're discriminating by doing that and making it less fair. So I think we just have to come up with ways that work a lot better. And I think using AI to screen is a mistake. I think that, we have to be able to build a system of trust, and we have to be able to match the two things more efficiently.
So no matter how you apply for a job, then you want to be considered seriously for that vacancy, whether you use the tools or not. I suppose using tools to help you apply for a vacancy, it's not too dissimilar to dating apps where you put on a picture of your very best version, but then you turn up to the restaurant looking like you do. And in the same case, the candidate turns up for interview and they say, "This isn't the same person." You can't.
Did you see that? Did you see the TikTok that this guy he was using one of these apps, and the app was listening to the interview in the background. And this guy's just from Starbucks. He knew nothing about it. He's doing this engineering assessment, and the app is reading. It's popping up with the answers to the questions, and it's terrifying. How does an employer deal with that? And I think a lot of people have not really thought this stuff through, if I'm honest.
The verification side of things is absolutely vital, but of course, when so many interviews are done remotely, you're not sitting in a room with someone else. It's difficult to know that, and in any interview process, essentially, you're trying to pick up as much clues as you can to know, I'm safe making an offer to this person. This is going to be a good hire if they accept a job with us. And there's always an element of jeopardy and an element of guesswork in that. So going back to, and I know we're doing things a bit back to front here, but what would you say is the core mission of CV Wallet? When you were thinking about it at the very beginning, what were you thinking? This is the issue, and this is what we're looking to solve.
Yeah, I think the core of it was, how can we make this current system better? Because we didn't think it was particularly good, and we strongly believe that job seekers should own and control that data, because we felt that it was being abused, and we felt that they should be able to prove what they are saying to be true. And I think, people lied on their CVs and have done for forever. There's always a story in the papers about some doctor who really wasn't.
But employers often
really
exaggerate that they're a much better employer than they really are. It's a two-sided, two-way street.
Yeah, it is. And I think, you can prove some of that stuff with third parties, Glassdoor, obviously, from an employer point of view. But I think that if you're applying for a job, you should be able to say, I've done this, and actually it's true. Because I think what you also want to avoid is, some of the referencing world, AI referencing. God, I have a problem with that, right? This idea that you have this stalker AI that will go through your life and tell your future employer that, when you were 18 years old, you smoked a joint or went through a red light whilst trying to take your wife to hospital who was giving birth at the time. What does that got to do with my ability to write Java code? It's just ridiculous. And yet we see a lot of these things popping up. There has to be trust built into it. And that type of approach, I think, does not engender trust. That actually destroys trust. And you have this kind of arms race of, we want proof, so do this test. And then the job seeker comes up with a tool to cheat on it. And it's not good. You should have this core kind of, this is who I am. This is what I can do. These are the skills that I have, and this is the proof that I, can demonstrate it. In which case, you can actually get on with the important stuff in terms of the actual hiring.
Yeah, that arms race of putting technology in the hands of both sides is what results in candidates, en masse making thousands of applications without, through the night, and employers on the other side saying, well, we need a tool to be able to scan out 98% of these, and no one is the winner, because ultimately the best person is not getting the job. Setting aside the AI and the tools that are being used, it's more important now than ever that I think that employers still have a human element to the decision making. When you have tools that are deciding, right, we're going to thin out 100 or 50 or whatever applications down to a small number and prioritize the ones that look most likely, because you can't speak to them all, it's not possible, then you can't have automated systems deciding who gets the job, because if that's the case, then a candidate who didn't get the job, who was able to show, well, I was, verifiably and provably a better candidate than the person who was offered, they've got a case for saying, well, I deserve to get that job. But if you have a human element, then no one denies that a human can decide to hire the person they like best, even if they're not quite the best qualified person for the job, because jobs are humans doing work.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we will see things go old school for a little bit. I think in-person interviews and all that kind of thing will certainly come back to an extent. But we also can't deny the fact that if for example you work for Uber, there is an AI deciding what your next job is. It's gig-based economy, and that's the same for a lot of those sort of companies. So I think I don't think we can avoid that. What I don't like is this idea that you press this magic button and computer tells you tomorrow you'll be doing a job doing this. And because where do you start with that? Because just if I'm qualified for that job today, maybe they start looking at you when you're at school and they say, well, this person's good at this, so they push you down a route. So you lose any kind of control over your life, and whilst it may be perceived or otherwise, I have a problem with that stuff.
So going back to CV Wallet, and I should mention CV Wallet is a finalist for the National Online Awards. You just might have your hands on one of these next month.
That'd be so cool.
4 weeks from tonight. Now, I've no idea who's looking to be likely for winners, but you're a finalist for 2 awards, which is a great thing. But getting back to that, when you initially told me about CV Wallet and what it was for and what you were doing with it, and this was pre all the AI being rolled in, but I initially thought, that's great. I can see the benefits for candidates. That's fantastic. But how can it be commercially viable? And of course that rides on the recruiter side of the equation. And I think that's the important side for people to understand as a business, because people often think, well, why are you doing this if it doesn't work as a business? I need to understand how it works as a business. So tell us about the recruiter side and the way that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it evolved. There's a reason why when you go to business schools and they tell you, identify the need and do all that kind of stuff, they're absolutely right, because we really didn't. We just found some cool tech and had this sort of belief that actually things should be done differently, and it was a really stupid way of doing things. It has absolutely evolved over time. The way that we thought we'd commercialize it, has changed. But we equally believe that if we provided a tool that job seekers really valued, we'd be able to leverage that at some point somehow. Yeah. Because recruiters will want to talk to them. So, we built this, the app, and that effectively created a sort of decentralized infrastructure. It's like a CV database, but it sits on everybody's phone. Yeah. And that infrastructure was what we built then the recruiter element off the back of. And the business model revolves around, how do we deliver on a cost per qualified applicant people to job seekers for those recruiters? So effectively, we feed, employers feed jobs into the system. The system then finds people that match the requirements of that job. It invites them to apply. Once they accept that invite to apply, it releases their details to the employer. So you end up with, let's say, that 5% ideally of the 5 people who are actually qualified to do the job, whatever the number. So you don't have to spend time filtering and getting rid of all the rubbish. And the actual model then works on I say it's a cost per qualified applicant, but it's a marketplace, so it's a real-time marketplace. Yeah. So it looks at, on an individual level, supply and demand, and then the price adjusts accordingly based on how much there is demand for a candidate. Because a nurse in Guildford may be different from a nurse in Glasgow, for example, and the system can cope with that.
So is it a walled garden platform where you're not connecting into other databases of vacancies or databases of candidates? Is it purely the employers who choose to be involved and the candidates who choose to be involved?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So can you give us any stats on where you are with employers, whether it be volumes or steps down the line or successes?
Early days, I think, is the is the honest answer.
Yeah.
So we're in the process. We just launched a partnership program for job boards. We just started because what we accept is we need to build our user base. So we have a partnership program whereby we work with job boards so that they can offer a cost per qualified applicant type model. And we just signed up our first job board, which is great. And we have a whole bunch of other ones coming in.
So job board they can inject vacancies into your platform.
Yep, absolutely. And equally candidates as well. Anyone that you introduce to as a user, then they basically get 100% of the revenue from that candidate for their life. So that's the job board side of things. On the other side, we've got a few ad agencies, and we're talking to some big RPOs who are going to start hopefully putting their jobs onto the system, and then we'll start the actual matching process. So it is very early days in terms of the commercial piece of it. It's taken us an awful long time to get here. I think we probably would have been 6 months earlier had AI not reared its head. And we have to rethink things, but it is what it is. And actually, we've ended up in the middle of what is a perfect storm, I think, where trust becomes really important. We haven't even talked about hallucinations in all of these applications, and the whole how you deal with volume. So I think we've ended up with it in a really interesting spot that I hope that recruiters will embrace.
So the tools out there that are enabling those high volumes of applications, those to an extent are maybe the enemy or maybe the fuel that drives people towards platforms like CV Wallet. And I should say, without naming them, there have been a number of candidate-centric platforms coming up in the past year, which is great to see, all doing things in slightly different ways and coming at it from different angles. But going back to those high volumes of applications are, or can be, in effect, a DDoS, a denial of service. When you apply, 2,000 times for a vacancy, the employers for that job then have to abandon their normal process and say, well, let's go back old school as you were doing before. Who do we know that can suit for this job, or give it to an agency?
And I think there are certain areas where it is particularly difficult. I mean, you think about early careers, graduates coming out of university. We know there was Arctic Shores did a survey, and they showed that 70% of graduates plan to use AI as a part of their job applications. Yeah. And you're talking about big volumes anyway. I mean, I can't even imagine how many applications a big graduate recruiter will be getting this year, and how many of them will all look exactly the same. And I know that they'll resort to using, they're not fans of the CV, which I understand them why. They'll use assessments to help themselves do that. But even then, it's going to be difficult. So I think, if you look at within, HR tech and how we handle, our recruitment funnels and how we deal with all that stuff, I just don't think that the matching technology will necessarily stand up to the volumes that people are going to throw at it. Not just that, all the applications are going to look very, very similar. They're going to look like the job description because it'll be written according to it. Yeah. So I think for them, it'll be hard to find the right people.
We've seen in the chat here, Jacob Madsen has been commenting quite a bit on that, and he was also commenting on the article that you'd written, which I've just put the link to in the chat there, when I saw the link to the article, I thought this is going to be a really long article because there's a lot to talk about there. But actually, you summarise it really well. But you could go on and on about the topic forever because it has so many tentacles, as a subject. So in the coming months, and it's hard to say years because who knows what can happen in years. We can't speculate that far. But in the coming 3, 6, and 9 months, what's in the pipeline for CV Wallets?
I think certainly to date, whilst we've been building out the tech and connecting the recruiter piece to it, we've been trying to raise awareness, and love Jacob. He is really on this stuff and is a big advocate of the job seeker being job seeker first, and people owning their data and how that data is used, and some of the upcoming legislation against AI and what have you. Yeah. So we've been very much sort of wanting to warn the industry and not warn, just make people talk about this stuff, right? And accept that it is a thing, and what are you going to do about it? And I think we are now at the point where, now we have the technology in place, we then start to do our own scaling. So the messages will certainly change, and we'll shift away from, the doom and gloom, as I always put it, the end is nigh type stuff, and try and focus on what is a solution to all of this. And here are some products that we've actually built that we think will help you address all this stuff. So, excuse me, it'll be very much about scaling, going to market, signing up our job board partners, starting to talk to more employers, bringing their jobs into the platform, starting to see the thing build and gain momentum. We have an interesting roadmap. We have so much that we want to do. We started out working with assessment providers, and we want to revisit that stuff so that, if you've taken an assessment, you can store that within the app. And then other employers can find you based on what you've already been assessed elsewhere, because it seems daft that when you apply, our daughter applied to Big Four accountancy firm. She did the same assessment 4 times. Bonkers. Why would you do that? Yeah. You need to do it once, and then every accountancy firm should be looking at that same assessment.
Certificate.
Exactly that. So there's lots of stuff we want to do that.
So in what you're doing alongside job boards, is that a way for job boards to evolve to I'm not saying that they'll become irrelevant, but job boards more so now than ever have to evolve faster, and this is a way in which they can become more intelligent vehicles for this industry.
Absolutely. And job boards, they eventually embraced the whole programmatic advertising thing, and that was one evolution.
Kicking and screaming, you have to say.
Say again, sorry.
Kicking and screaming, they weren't going to it voluntarily.
No, they didn't. And we watched Chris Foreman work the room and warn people about Indeed and this coming change that was happening to their industry and how they needed to embrace it and how they'd help enable it. And in some ways we're following that same playbook, but I guess in a different way. Instead of it being cost per click, it's more about we call it programmatic sourcing. So you take programmatic technology and you apply it to candidate sourcing, and then you end up with a cost per qualified applicant. So it's not advertising. It is it's the other side of the coin. The job finds person, not the person finds a job. So we kind of we lived through that one time, and we think that we can go out there and try and help people embrace that, add it to their existing portfolio. As far as we can, I'm a job board guy. I ran a job site back in the day, and my last job was at Indeed. So I believe in this stuff, and I think that job boards provide a really interesting an ecosystem, a community, particularly with those niche boards where you can start to build those professional communities, and I hope they're not going away. But to survive what potentially could happen to their advertising revenue, they need to embrace some other additional revenue streams, and obviously we want to work with them to achieve that.
You mentioned a couple of words there that take me right back to where we were at the beginning. You said it's not job advertising. It's not putting a billboard at the end of the street saying anyone who's interested in this job, please let us know. What you're doing is enabling the job and the candidate to be matched, or the candidate to be in the driving seat, and that much more focused and directed, targeted matching is, of course, going to be more efficient, and you would expect more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a job seeker, we always talk about the bus journey home from being made redundant. So you're sat on the bus, and you know that by the time you get home, you've got to tell your partner that I've lost my job, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then you're going to start the soulless task of looking through job boards, applying for jobs, all this kind of stuff. In our world, if you're one of our app users, we want to say, right, I'm now currently available. And by doing that, all the people who are searching for people like you invite you to apply for their job. And it happens instantaneously, so that by the time you get off the bus, you don't have to just say, do you know what, I've lost my job. I have lost my job, but I've got 5 interviews lined up, some really interesting companies in the next week. So, it's about speeding up that process and taking the you know, the trekking through writing applications is just such a horrible thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not even the rejection, the being ignored, the ghosting that then goes on. And you wonder why people then embrace these AI tools to make life easy for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. That period of, let's say, 3 months, when someone decides I'm going to go for a job elsewhere and getting the job and leaving to start the job elsewhere, that 3 month period is already traumatic enough. But if we can boil that down, whether someone's made redundant or they've just decided enough's enough, I'm going to go elsewhere, then being able to make the whole process much fairer, slicker, control more in the hands of candidates, and all the information available to employers that they can believe and trust, then that boils down that period of 3 months to a much shorter period of time, and therefore less trauma, you would hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And who doesn't like being headhunted? It's a really nice feeling, isn't it, when someone picks up the phone and says, we've got this job and we'd love you to come and have a chat.
Yeah.
And we want to tell you about it. And that to us is the ideal.
As an old school recruiter, those candidates headhunted, they get a bit coy and arrogant. Oh, well, okay, woo me, persuade me. But isn't that what we would all want to be in a position for ourselves? And why wouldn't we want that for other people? I think it's all about fairness. So, Richard, I know that we've gone on a lot longer, due partly to the technical hitches at the start. I want to thank you for coming on this afternoon. It's been fascinating. I could talk about this all day, and I've asked questions in all the wrong order because it's a topic that I'm quite excited about. I know Jacob is too, and I think I'll definitely get Jacob on for a show at some point in the future, and we can shoot the breeze on that. But CV Wallets, obviously, we mentioned before, you're going to be speaking at the TAtech conference coming up on the 4th to the 6th of December, and then of course on the 6th of December we have the NORAs in the evening. Best of luck for both. I'll obviously be there at both as well. And of course, we'll have Beverly and more of the team coming along as well. Yeah,
we're bringing the entire team, actually. It's Christmas outing, so they're happy.
It's dangerously close to Christmas. On that, I'm going to say thank you very much for being a great guest. Thanks everyone for being with us through the technical hitches and switching over to this stream. And we will be back very soon with more shows on TAtech. I know that on Friday, Peter Weddle has a show with Mikhil from SonicJobs, and he's got a few things to say about job advertising as well. So until then, I'm going to say thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you then.